Hi, y'all. Don't mind me. I was drying my hair because I washed it earlier. But if you just look at me from like the forehead down, I'm real cute. But I just wanted to document this moment for myself. And if other people happen to participate, then sure, whatever. However, yeah. So yesterday was Thanksgiving, and I got myself a hotel with like a kitchenette to cook a meal. It wasn't like the best meal ever because it's not like they have like an oven or whatever. So I was just making the best with what I had. And I like had a decent dinner. And I haven't had like a home cooked meal in a while that I cooked myself since I've been like out the house, just like trying to get by. And um and I'm just like, yeah, I I gotta get my life together and figure out a way to create stability for myself and put myself in a situation where like this could be my everyday circumstance. And, like there's several times where I've been like looking for apartments or whatnot, and I always like look for like a one bed apartment. And I don't know, like being in this situation, I'm like, look, at this point, like I could work with a studio, like that's fine, like just anything where I can have stability and a space and privacy. And I get it, like, in, like, an apartment building can be, like, annoying with, like, I don't know, neighbors and whatnot and people walking all hard or, like, banging shit or whatever. But I'm like, "Look, if I just have my own space and, my privacy, a place where I could just have my things and everything stays where I leave it, and every day I'm rule I create it," yeah, I'm really good with that. Um, you know But I know sometimes in some instances it could be a little bit challenging because I don't want to think about it that way though. I know there's ways around it. Yeah, sure, there might be some challenges, but there's ways to overcome it and win anyway. So, yeah. Um, so I'm just gonna focus on the wins. I'm gonna focus on overcoming. Yeah, I'm gonna try to think more positively. Because earlier today I've had several moments where I've just kind of like expressed my frustrations and was kind of like spazzing about certain things. But I transmuted that into a means of like expressing my frustrations in a way where I'm declaring my freedom and declaring the autonomy over my life and dismantling all systems and, you know, structures that participate in hindering me from my free will and just dismantling anything that interrupts my freedom in any capacity. And just declare that, I'm the authority of my life. And, you know, I rebuke all things that try to influence my thoughts, influence my mind, influence my world, influence what I say, influence what I eat. Like, no, it's done. Like, the battles are done, the war is won. And I won in this infatuate world of Neptune, you know. And yeah, so I was having that moment earlier today, but that's beside the point. What I really wanted to get on here and talk about was that I was watching The Matrix, and breaking out the Matrix is, you know, a means of freedom. And It's funny because I've watched that movie so many times, right? I feel like it's one of those movies where the replay value is just, like, astounding. And not only that, but every time I watch it, I always see something new. I always learn something new. And, um and mainly because, like, it came out when I was a kid, right? So, obviously, as I grew into an adult, like, the more I've experienced in life, the more that the movie resonates with me, and in a way where it like, my eyes are more open to deeper meanings of philosophy. What is the matrix that I'm dealing with at the time? You know, it could be like being in a corporate work setting or the matrix of society, like whatever, right? There's so many things that the matrix can be symbolic of. And then I feel like in this day and age, um, I feel like we're realizing that the matrix is more real. Right as somebody's like slamming the fucking wall behind me at 2:52. Right. But I rebuke that. Um, anyway, um, realizing the Matrix is more real in more ways than one. And, especially with this world feeling like a simulation and realizing like, a lot of the stuff that we see about spirituality and, you know, the occult and metaphysics being real and being able to bend the code. Um, I'm realizing that in my own life and finding ways to break out of it and say that's not my reality. I don't subject myself to it. I don't accept it and I don't claim it. And yeah, so I was watching The Matrix again today and yeah, I just had some realizations that I wanted to document in real time. So I don't know, one day I can like come back to this and just be like, okay, message. Um, you know, I was like looking at the character Neo and who is a big inspo to me. Um, my company is named Neo Mac Entertainment, inspired by Neo from the Matrix. And I guess you can say like Neo Soul music too. That wasn't the initial thought, but somebody mentioned that, and I was like, ah, you know what, that does make sense. Um, but I was always inspired by his character. Um, being on this journey of self-discovery and in discovering himself, discovering that the world around him was a fallacy. And I've been on that journey myself in more ways than one. And you know, the thing with Neo is that, and watching The Matrix again, there's so many things that's happening like today in real time that I feel like were reflected in this film. And interesting thing about like the whole oracle and telling the future and whatnot. And it's funny because yesterday, actually, was it yesterday? Yeah, it was yesterday. I was making a video talking about a situation in my life, and I referenced the Matrix when um the oracle was like, "Oh yeah, and don't worry about the vase." And Neo's like, "What vase?" And he knocks the vase over. She's like, "That vase," or and he was like, "Oh, I'm sorry." And she's like, "I told you not to worry about it. I'll get one of my kids to fix it," right? One of the potentials. And mind you, can we just have a moment for the fact that the Oracle was like smoking a cigarette in the kitchen while she got kids in the other room? But we love the Oracle though. Anyway, um, and I'm not saying that to be judgmental, but she was a grown grandma age lady, you know. But and apparently at one point in life, people did that. But whatever. Um, just putting that out there. But anyway, but yeah, so she was like, don't worry about it. Um, and it reminded me of certain situations in my life where I feel like it's easy to, you know, judge a person, but you're not looking at the things that led up to that person's actions and what was intentionally crafted to influence said actions. But that's beside the point. That's not the point that I wanted to get into with this live stream. The thing that I wanted to get into was that, just like, I don't know, I was just like watching this movie. And again, like, there's always, as I keep progressing in my journey in life, there's always something new that that story resonates with, or there's a part of my journey that I feel like connects with that movie. And I've been in a space where I've just been like, you know, getting back to trusting myself and relying on me and believing in myself. And not that that I wasn't, but just like in certain instances where I feel like I would give people chances or, hope that other people would help me the way that I would, like, I don't know, how do I say this? You know, I mean, of course, when you're in certain situations, like, if you could be helped, and people are willing to help you, it should be like you should be able to receive it. And that's something that I've struggled with for a while. Like, I struggled with accepting people's help and accepting um, that there are people who want to help me, even though sometimes it can be confusing because, it's like a lot of back and forth, a lot of like playing this way, playing that way, or whatever. And then there's times where I open myself up to receive help, and it just turns out that I'm better off just like helping myself and just like relying on me. And yeah, I mean, it's funny enough. Speaking of videos that I've made, I made a video earlier today, like breaking down some of my lyrics, and in a song "Misery" that I wrote, I say, uh, Scooby like Morpheus, I'll beat him into. Pray Neo come through to come save me, or learn to fend for myself on my Trinity. And, in a perfect world, it would be great to have somebody like a Neo come like help you out and save you. But Neo is a fictional character. Neo is not a real person. He's a character in the movie. And I enjoy the movie very much so. And like I said, it still inspires me. In my life, I've always felt like I always loved how badass Trinity was, being like a woman that was like willing to get down and dirty and fight. But in ways I always resonated with Neo just because of like just him being on that journey of like discovering who he was and figuring out that he was the one. And, you know, being like the hero And I've always felt like in my life, like I was the Neo in my story, if that makes any sense. But the thing is, in order for Neo to be who he is, he needed help, right? Like he couldn't have just done it on his own. He couldn't have just freed himself out of the matrix by himself. Like he needed help. And it also makes me think of like Asada Shakur, um, because she passed away earlier this year. And and it makes me think of her, escaping out of prison. But she couldn't have escaped by herself, like she needed a team of people to help her. And so sometimes I think about stuff like that, where it's like sometimes you do need help from the outside to have people like to be free. And that can be true. But I guess my issue is like seeking help in the wrong places and realizing like sometimes you're just better off helping yourself. Because if you leave it up to other people, you know, it might not be done well or done at all, really. And for me, my own experience, like I feel like, and again, like going back to the Matrix, like, okay, when Morpheus sacrifices himself to get captured by the agents so they can get Neo out of the Matrix, Neo is like, I think I can save him. And the operation and the mission to save Morpheus isn't a quiet one. It's not something where they had to like sneak in the building and like, try to like sneak around the security. Like, no, they went in their guns blazing. Him and Trinity, single handedly. Well, not single handedly, it was two of them. But basically, two of them versus all them other people, right? Fought their way through. And it wasn't quiet. It wasn't like super strategic. It wasn't, like well thought out months in advance. Like he literally just got the word from the oracle, like, by the way, this is gonna happen. It's either you or Morpheus. And, he wasn't like the most strategic thinker or, like well thought out, like months in advance, like this is the strategy, this is how we're gonna break into the building, this is the plan. Like, no, they just went in there, tore shit up, got Morpheus and got the fuck up out of there. And and I'm not saying like strategy is a bad thing. There's definitely instances and moments where like strategy is necessary, you know, especially in situations where you may have a lot to lose. And, it might require you to be a little bit more strategic. You can't just be guns blazing because there could be repercussions for that. But at that point, Neo really, I mean, he had already lost everything that he built in his false reality that was in the Matrix. He had nothing to lose. And, was willing to take the risk of rescuing Morpheus. And I resonate with that. I resonate with that because, like, I feel like that kind of a person where, like, yes, like, it's cool to come up with the most strategic method and, like, outthink your opponent or whatever. But I feel like there's some instances where it's just like, fuck strategy. Like, either we gonna get this shit done or not, you know? And I'm the type of person that just really wants to get things done and just go guns blazing, handle shit, and leave, you know? And I don't know, maybe that's me like lacking patience, But I mean, I feel like for me in my own circumstance and situation, there's just certain things that like I don't have the luxury of just like being the most strategic person and waiting around for like things to transpire like within months. Like, no, I need shit happen like now, you know. Um, just because of like circumstances and situations. And, like for example, like if you want to bring it to Sun Tzu, I hope I'm saying that right. Art of War, where he breaks down like just the different elements to consider in war, like the heavens and the terrains and um, all those things. And if you're thinking about like, if you're like fighting somebody in a swamp versus like a desert, and there's certain strategies to consider with that, right? And I mean that happens to be a book about war and strategy. And then like, is it hot? Is it cold? Um, how far do you have to travel? What resources do you have? Like, um, and things like that. And for me, my main battle is like, I know I feel very much like a bird um, that desires to migrate to warmth. Because ideally, like I was traveling south, um, or at least that was my gut instinct. And what I really wanted to do when I left my house was to travel south. And I felt like I didn't go with my gut. And I was like trusting things outside of myself that led me to different journeys and different places where, you know, I was, it was perceived that it would be a better opportunity for me and there would be like some type of like stability. And that just wasn't the case. Um, and I feel like I should have just trusted myself from the very beginning. And yeah, sometimes like it's easy to think that others have the answers because maybe they're like they have more insight about a situation than you do, or maybe more experience or more like success or accolades or whatever. But sometimes, even if you're inexperienced in a thing, you know who you are, or at least you should know who you are. You know what you like, you know what resonates with you, you know what feels good to you and what doesn't feel good to you, and you know what's just right for you. And I went against that, wanting to like believe that like other people who are like more knowledgeable or more successful had better insight. And I'm coming to the realization that it's not always true. And, not to say that, some people along my journey haven't been helpful, like they definitely have. There's been moments where I've had support and people looking out for me and people handling things that I might not have had the resources to handle at the time. And, just being like assisted and like, you know, um, I guess locksmithed out of certain situations. And I'm grateful for those moments, and not to be, you know, to be clear, like, um, there are moments where people have been helpful along my journey, and I don't take that for granted. But I feel like my journey would have been a lot different had I just trusted myself. Because even without having all the clear, direct answers, like, I know myself. I know what I like, I know what I don't like, and I know what I want. And sometimes in wanting to trust other people and believe in other people, I went against what felt true to me. And every time I did that, it never worked. Like when it where it really mattered. Like there might have been little, okay, let me not say that. There might have been, I feel like I described it the best way like a few days ago, where there's a difference between people like providing moments of comfort and moments of support while you're like going through a struggle rather than alleviating the struggle, because alleviating the struggle is a risk, and it requires like it's just a risk, and sometimes it's a risk that people aren't willing to take, and that's okay, and that's fine, because sometimes, like, I understand that certain circumstances around my life are a big risk to take, and and people have their own lives. People got, you know careers and homes and mortgages and kids and stuff like that. So that's a lot for you know people and families and whatever. It's a lot to manage, and then let alone taking on somebody else's you know problems. It's a lot to deal with. And my thing is like, it's okay to recognize that that's a lot to deal with, and it's okay to not deal with it, right? Like it's okay, but don't try to like take on more than you can handle in the name of like wanting to be a super in someone's life, and that's just not the role. That's just not the role for you, and that's okay, and that's fine. Because maybe in some instances, for me, it's just better for me to be my own superhero, because I'm willing to fight against any and everything. And it's harder that way. It's more challenging that way. It's more challenging to not be like super patient and strategic and playing both sides and all of that shit, right? Like to go guns blazing against opposition, there's a risk. There's like, you know, there's a risk to it. There's, potential attacks, there's criticism, you put yourself in the line of harm, and but I'm willing to do that though. I'm willing to do that. I'm willing to like oppose all the things that hinder my freedom in any capacity. I'm willing to go guns blazing. because I'm impatient. And, I want things to transpire like immediately. And I know some things is like better. God damn it. Okay. And whoever keeps knocking on this fucking wall, your mom's a hoe. Anyway, yeah, that's basically what I'm trying to say. I'm like, look, everybody has their own techniques and risks that they're willing to take and risks that they're not willing to take. And I'm with the shits. I'm, you know, I'm with the smoke. I'm willing to call out establishments. I'm willing to, you know, criticize, you know, political figures and people in positions of power. Like I'm willing to call out institutions. I'm willing to do all of that, especially when I see injustice or experience injustices. And I know some people can't do that. Some people feel like, they may agree, but they can't say that they agree out loud. And maybe they might do like little things to help behind the scenes. And I'm just like, I don't got time for that. Like, I'm just like, look, I'm after my freedom now. And I'm willing to take the risks now. And and I know it makes my journey harder that way. It's harder to be combative against the system, but I'm willing to do it. And I really don't want to deal with anybody that's not willing to be combative like I am, like really ready to fight the fight. Because like in my life, I feel very much like Cinderella by Cheetah Girls, even though, which I found out recently, is not their original song. Like there was another girl group that sung that song and they did a cover of it, and then that their cover just became like really big. But that whole idea of like, I don't want to be a princess in distress waiting for some prince to save her when I can save myself. You know, and there's like the lyrics where it's like, um, I don't want to be like Cinderella sitting in the dark, cold, dusty cellar waiting for somebody to come and set me free. Like so real. And like, yeah, okay, like, all right. If you want to, like, first of all, for millennials, like Cheetah Girls was that. But, girl power and all of that stuff. But in real life though, like in real life, I don't want to be like Snow White waiting. Wait, what's the next part of the chorus? I don't want to be like someone waiting for a handsome prince to come and save me, or I won't survive unless somebody's on my side. Like, yeah, I feel that because who has time to wait on a prince? Some of y'all princes be taking too fucking long, and 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 then and then there's some instances. Funny enough, that I was just thinking about Insecure, where what was that girl's name? After Lawrence broke up with Issa, and he was talking to that girl, Tasha, I think was her name. And she a little hood, but she had a solid job. She worked at the bank, and she was pretty, she was cute, body T, and and they was fucking a lot and all of those things, you know. But she really liked Lawrence. And the thing is, Lawrence was at an interesting point in his life because like he had like the makings of like a guy that can be in corporate but he was just like down on his luck at the moment. And he was in the process of developing this app. And, and at the time, the issue with him and Issa was that like he was just like, you know, on the couch, not really doing much. And she was basically like working full time, holding it together. And so, and her stepping out of the relationship, and funny enough, I was in a similar situation. Um, but she was dealing with this guy, or she messed around with this guy that she used to know, because he was like, he had the studio, he was a producer, he was kind of like he was doing something, right? And so, that's what prompted Lawrence and Issa to break up. And so while Lawrence was like getting on his feet, he was dating this Tasha girl. And I guess for Lawrence, it might have seemed like, even though she was, she might not have been like in like a super corporate space, or she wasn't like super like, I don't know, like bougie and uppity. And she was a little hood, but she had a solid job and she had her own place. And, I think at that point he was staying at his friend's house until like he was working at Best Buy at one point, and then he got this corporate job. And between him like kind of like getting back on his feet, Tasha, the girl, she wanted to be serious with him. And like he was acting like he wanted to be serious, but he wasn't really, and there was this one time where she invited him to like this family reunion and that they was having at the park. And he was like, all right, I'll be there. And he was there for like a quick second, helped out a little bit, and then he dipped and went to his like job party at the corporate job. And then by the time he came back, the family reunion was over. And Tasha is like, like I invited you to be here. And, like I was really thinking that she was really feeling him and thinking that, maybe it could be something serious beyond them just like fucking around and everything just being sexual. And, you know, and he basically like bailed on her. And she was like, you're the type of guy that's a fuck boy, but doesn't know that he's a fuck boy. Like you think you're a good guy, but you're really a fuck boy. And I was like, oh, that's a word. That's a word. And I've never seen that explained that way, but that stuck with me. And I'm like, I feel like, yeah, because that makes sense. Sometimes it's not always like you got somebody that's like a good guy and he's sweet and nice and all these things and romantic. And then you have like the fuck boy that just like wants to fuck and isn't trying to be serious at all. But there are those gray areas where you have something that's kind of in between, where it's like, they try to do the things of like the good guy and like show up and help out a little bit. But then like when it really matters, they fall short. And and I get it, like Lawrence was in a situation where like he was like back on his feet again. He got this corporate job. He's working at this app development tech thing. And and he's you know, building his like social network again with his different coworkers and stuff like that. But and then so I guess to him, like it can appear that like where he was like ascending was like above somebody like Atasha, because she was like, like a girl from around the way. She probably, I don't know if she like graduated college or something like that, but and she was very, but she, even though she like a little hood, but she was a solid girl though. Like she looked out for him, you know, and but they had like those. I don't know. I guess from like just observing and just being like a fan of the show, it feels like Lawrence may have felt like he was like above her type of thing. Even though when they started hanging out, you know, she was kind of feeling him, but you know, she had her own thing going on. You know what I mean? It's not like she needed him. She, like I said, she had her own job, she had her own place. Like it's not like she was checking for him, or like, well, she kind of was, but she wasn't. It's like it's not like she needed him. Like she was doing her own thing. And then he just kind of like took her up on, hanging out and stuff like that. And then it progressed from there. But, that just, I don't know. I was just like, I've come across a few individuals like that, where it's just like, it's that gray area of us like, okay, you do things and like maybe you have the intentions and like you want to be a good guy. You would like to be seen that way. You would like to be perceived that way, but you do fuckboy shit. And it's like, and especially like those guys that, you know, in like that corporate space and like tech and all of that. And you got a little money and you on your feet and you got something like, and you're in those like, I don't know. I wouldn't even say upper echelon spaces, but you know, but those elevated spaces where it's like, okay, you're not working the job at Best Buy, but you have like an office somewhere, right? Or you're developing an app, or I don't know, adjacent to Silicon Valley. So, you feeling yourself because, at one point he was struggling trying to get that app together, the Woot Woot app. Hold on. Let me chill. But that's what it was called. It was called Woot Woot. I don't mean to laugh at the app, but that's what it was called. And and it's interesting because it's like thinking, mind you, this show is about Issa Rae, or Issa D is the character, but Issa Rae made the show. And it makes me think of when they seen each other again after breaking up at a friend's like birthday party. And at that time, this was after he stopped talking to Tasha and he was hanging out with a girl from the office. I think she was like an Indian girl. I could be wrong. I forget her ethnicity, so forgive me for not being completely accurate on that. And so they kind of get into an argument after the fact. And I mean, and Lawrence had a valid reason to be upset at Issa because she did cheat. And oh, bless me, bless me, bless me, bless me, bless me, bless me, bless me. But then at the same time, like I get where Issa was coming from because it was like she was holding up the relationship. Like he wasn't, you know, getting his life together, you know, and she was pretty much the financial strength of the relationship. And he had been like, had the business plan and everything for Woot Woot, and it just like wasn't getting off the ground. However, um, yeah, it just reminded me of that time when they was like arguing in the street, and she was like, "Well, and how's Woot Woot doing?" It's like, oh, girl. But like but I mean, okay, Woot Woot might not have been doing nothing, but he was working a job at that point. Like, he had a corporate job or whatever. And yeah, but anyway, I'm going off on a tangent here. Because I was originally talking about the Matrix, but I was thinking about that moment in Insecure where Tasha was basically telling Lawrence about himself and was just like, you know, you you're one of those people that, think you're a good guy, but you're a fuckboy and don't know it. And I thought that was interesting because I feel I've probably come across a few of those in the world, you know. And yeah. And there's many instances where I've been in like situations where like it don't matter like who you are, your walk of life, your background. You could be like poor and struggling, or you could be rich and successful. You know, sometimes, like just as a woman, you're better off just like relying on yourself, you know? Because I feel like, and even in my own highs and lows, like, there's been times where like I was on a high in my like career life where I was like working multiple jobs, or I had like accepted a management position. And so technically I was in a space where I was like technically like ahead of my partner, or making more money, or had more stability. But then again, like at that time I had like more like support around me. Like I was living at home with family, but I wasn't in a situation where my family was like gonna like kick me out or anything like that, because I don't know, they needed me to be trapped in the house. Even though I was like aiming to have like my own apartment, right? And that was the goal. The goal was just to like finally have some stability for myself and just like have my own space. And I was in that situation where um I technically was like doing more than my partner. And then there's been times where like, I was on like a low and not working and like struggling and needed help. And there had been like help available to me, maybe not necessarily like a partner or somebody I was dating, because I was single at this time. um but there had been like folks like helping or whatever. um but again, even in those instances and circumstances, like I feel like, although grateful for the help, I was probably better off just like trusting my own gut and just like leading myself rather than like seeking the help or the belief of the help of others. These machines be pissing me off, because my thing is like I have it on a certain like temperature, and then it does other things. Like it be turning on, turning off, and all these things. And I don't know. But anyway. Yeah, and I don't know. I just feel like yeah, this conversation was about the Matrix. It was about the Matrix, but then, I went off on a tangent here. But yeah. But I mean, it still kind of like pertains to that, like, like I said, like in a situation where like I was like kind of like down on my luck, and you know, would benefit from like the help of others. Um, you know, I feel like in some of those instances I was dealing with folks that like, you know, was trying to like live up to being the good guy, but still, playing games, or feel like they have to play the game. Um, or maybe they just are, you know, fuck boys, fuck boys, fuck men. Yeah, I don't know. But yeah, so I don't know. Moral of the story is like, ladies, depend on yourself. Trust yourself. Even if like there's circumstances where like you might not have everything all together and you might be dealing with somebody that might be like more accomplished than you or more successful than you. And and maybe they might be willing to help out, but like something that I've always felt to be true was like it's better to have your own. It's better to have like your own money, your own place, your own job, your own car. It's just better to have your own things. So like, if somebody's like providing a life for you and say something happens to that person, then what you gonna do? Right? And I've always been a believer of that. Like, it's something that I remember, Wendy Williams speaking a lot about. Whereas like, like even in her like marriage situation where she was saying she grew up knowing like of course she enjoys being like at the time enjoyed being a wife and a mom, but knew that she was a career woman and wanted to create not only her name for herself but a career where she had her own. So, God forbid something happened with her husband, she had her own money. And that was the case. And everything that's been going on with her life, like I hope that she gets through it and it gets better. Oh Lord, my throat itches right now. But I've always resonated with that. I never wanted to be somebody that like relied on other people taking care of me. Like even when I like my dad was around, like I didn't like him doing everything for me. Like I wanted to learn how to do stuff myself. Like even if he was like fixing stuff up for me, like I wanted to learn how to do it. So at some point, if he wasn't around to do it, I would be okay. Like I've always had that mentality. Like I've always wanted to work and have my own money. I've always wanted my own space. Like I've been trying to get out that fucking house for years. Like since I was in high school. Like when I was in high school and looking at colleges, like I wanted to be on campus so I could just get the fuck out of that house and just be in my own space before I realized what all was going on in my life. And like I've always just wanted my independence because I never want to be in a situation where like I'm solely relying on somebody else. And God forbid there's a situation where like something doesn't go right. And now like I feel like frustrated that things aren't working out because I'm like solely relying on other people. And then it's like now I'm coming off as like ungrateful or like entitled because it's not happening how I want it to happen. And my whole thing is like, I don't want to put anybody in a position where they feel like unappreciated or like I'm being ungrateful solely because things aren't happening the way I want it to. And if I was just in complete control and had complete independence of my life, I could just handle it myself and just deal with it myself. And and I'm like slowly but surely like really trying to get myself back into a space, or not really back, but into a space where like I can just rely on me. Like I don't have to rely on somebody saving me or helping me or whatever. And not that I don't want to receive help, but like I want to be in a position where I know like I can cover my things. Like I have a job, I have my own car, my own place, and my bills are paid, and if there's other people who want to help out with that, that's cool. But if they're not around, I know I can ensure that I'll be fine regardless. Like that's just always the position that I've always wanted to be in. And even in my career, like, and so and just because of my situation, like it forced me to kind of like be in a space where I'm like really pushing my music and hustling my CDs. And my last live stream I celebrated selling 100 CDs, and I'm kind of like frustrated about it now just because it's like I had saved up money to like potentially move to a situation where like I could like get a job and get an apartment and all these things, and that process has just been taking longer than I wanted to. And I feel like because I've been like trying to trust the process and maybe trust other people like helping me out with certain things, but like in trusting other people helping me out, it's been taking forever. And if I'd have just like took a leap of faith or just trusted myself, shit could have been done by now. But then at the same time, like, because there's been instances where I just went, like, I didn't follow people's script, and I was like, look, I want to get this thing done now. So even if there were like people moving the goalpost or putting certain blockages in my way, like I still went forward anyway. And like, for example, like like I said, like I was planning on moving south. I was planning on moving south where it was warm because that's where I wanted to be. I don't like the cold. I was tired of the winter in Jersey, but like at least I was like in my house or whatever, and it's fine. But like in traveling, like I had been like staying in my car, and then my car stopped working. So now it's like, okay, well, I'm in an area where fall is around the corner and winter is going to be around the corner. So I need to figure out what I need to do to continue moving towards where I want to be, and not like towards where like other people want me to be, but where I want to be. And and so because of that, I was like, look, let me get out here and sell my CDs and save some money. And, and then I'll pay for the tickets and then, maybe tow my car or whatever and get where I'm trying to go. And then at least I'll have my car with me and I'll have a place to be in until like I could find like a stable job in the area that I want to be in. And then like, progress and move into like getting an apartment. That was like my whole like thing, right? And I know they say like move in silence, but like, can I really do that with all this shit that goes on in my life? But whatever. And so I was doing that, and then I had everything saved up. I had the towing company. They said it was going to be a certain price, and I just needed to pay a like a down payment towards this price or whatever the case may be. And then at literally the day of, because I told them in advance, I said, look, can you have a driver here early this day? Because I have a train to catch later on. But I want to be there to, give the car over to the driver so I know who the driver is and like I'm the one giving the car. They didn't answer back until like hours after the fact, after the time that I told them to have somebody there. And then I'm on the phone with them and they're like, okay, let's see what drivers are available. I'm like, what do you mean, let's see what drivers are available? I told you days ago that this is when I needed a driver. I needed a driver this day. So there should have already been a driver ready to meet me. So what do you mean we got to see which driver is available? Then so they're telling me, okay, we have a driver that's available and it's going to cost like $500 more. What? The fuck are you talking about? I was so fucking pissed off. And so that put me in a situation where I had to cancel my tickets that day. Like, mind you, I had everything. And the frustrating thing about that is because like I did everything in advance. Like I already did the research on what the price would be, even though the price moved up a bit. So it was like, fine, whatever. But I'm going to book it because if I wait to book it, the price is only going to get higher. So I'm going to book the tickets now, and then I'll work up whatever money I need to work up so I can pay for the tow. So I did all that, had all that ready, and then they said the price was going to be what the price was. And so I worked my ass off to make sure I had that money for that price. And then a little bit extra just to cover like food and expenses. And mind you, like I had, Angie with me at the time, which is a whole thing in itself that I'm not going to talk about right now because I don't want to talk about it. But and then of course the goalpost changed at literally the last second, the day that I needed to be going. And so it is just like ridiculous. And And so like because of situations like that, it frustrates me and makes me feel like, okay, well, maybe there's some type of system that I need to like wait for, or somebody like, no, I don't need to do that because I don't live for people. My life is my life, and if I want to move somewhere, I should be able to fucking move, especially if I'm making my money. I'm working my ass off, even without a job, but working for myself and selling my own product and saving my own money and investing it, and investing my money too. Like, no, I'm not about to like feel like I have to wait for somebody else to give the okay for me to go. Like, no, fuck y'all. Like, I don't live for people. It's my fucking life. And if I want to make a move, I want to make a move. And so, there's been like times where I was like taking the advice of people, like, and, like prolonging the process and thinking like, okay, maybe I need to wait a little bit more. But I'm like, bruh, I wanted to leave in September before it got cold because like I'm in my car right now. So like that was the whole thing. And it's like frustrating. And, you know, and then I was planning on leaving again. But then the only thing about that was just like, trying to figure out like what my living situation was going to be, because it's like, all right, I'm trying to tow my car. And every time I try to, connect with a company to tow my car, they keep giving me the runaround with these prices. And, the prices just keep going up. And so I'm like, all right, well, maybe I need to figure something else out. Maybe I need to figure out like how, if I could get an apartment. But I'm like, in order for me to get an apartment, I need a job. And there was a job situation that I've like been like in communication with for like over a year now. And they're like, oh, well, when are you moving? Or, are you moving down here? I'm like, yeah, that's the ideal. And they're like, oh, when are you moving? I'm like, well, when I can get the job. Like if I can get the job, then I can get the apartment. Then, and it's like, I don't know how people do that where they like, I don't know, like get settled in a distance, you know, and like get an opportunity. But like that's what has to be the thing for me. And and I'm like, I'm tired of like feeling like I have to like go off of other people giving me the okay of like, not this time, but let's do it this time. Like, no, I want to do it now. And trusting myself, I would have been, now granted, at that time when I initially was planning on moving, I think it was like hurricane season. But I'm like, okay, yeah, sure. That would have been a bit of a challenge. But at least hurricane season don't last that long. By the time hurricane season would have been done, I'd have been like in the area and it'd have been nice and warm and I wouldn't have to worry about like being cold in my car. Because it's only, you know, I mean, gratefully there's been like warm days and, days where it hasn't been that bad, but like, yeah, whatever. Basically, this is literally my quest in breaking out of the matrix and dealing with roadblocks and, you know, and trusting myself is frustrating when you have to work with these institutions, because it's like, all right, to get an apartment, I have to put an application into some type of a facility and they have to give me the okay of if I have the apartment or not. And I can only hope for the best. And then same thing with a job. And and I was making enough in my sales, like for at least 2 months straight, I had made like over $1,000 in like sales and donations. And so I'm like, okay, I can at least like report this as some type of income. But it would have been better had I had like a full-time job with a consistent salary, you know, and then, I had like some like extra money and savings and stuff like that and investments and whatnot. So, but it's just like just putting it all together and then, having a company look at it and verify it and confirm it as being viable enough to, you know, have the apartment. Like, because I'm like, I don't want to like move out somewhere and not have somewhere to stay. Like, at least at the very least, regardless of my situation, I at least have my car, right? It's not like I'm like sleeping on a bench somewhere. and I'm grateful for that. And my car has like my belongings and whatnot. Grateful. Despite it working when it wants to, it light up and work and, when it wants to, but whatever. So I'm just kind of going off on a tangent here. But yeah, I don't know. Long story short, even though I already went through the long story, um, you know, I'm just trying to break out the matrix. And sometimes it's frustrating when you know, when I don't trust myself and try to trust like someone else or someone's advice or whatever, and it doesn't work out. And I feel like, damn, I should have just trusted myself. And, and then had I just like trusted myself, I probably would have been in a better situation. And then it's, at the same time, it's also frustration in those times where I do take that leap and I do trust myself and I just, go off of what I want to do. And then I have to deal with these institutions that, you know, like give me the runaround and like, try to like halt what I have doing. And it's just like, all right, well, somehow, some way, I just need to figure out how to get to a point where I can take those leaps and trust myself and not be in a position where I'm relying on somebody to like help me and save me and all those things. And if there's people who want to help me along the way, then I'm grateful for that. And I receive that support. I receive that love. I receive that assistance. But I don't want to rely on that. I don't want to solely like live off of the support of others. Like I want to be in a situation where I can support myself and I can depend on myself. And I know that I can take care of myself. And in doing that, working with establishments that make it easy and accessible for me to take care of myself. Because it's like, it's one thing when it's like, when it's like, oh, you got your own, you got an apartment and a car and a this and a that. But in order to get those things, you have to like work and negotiate with other people. And I guess, you know, hopefully I just find the right people. Hopefully I just find the right people, to find the right institutions, find the right circumstances, the right salesman, the right person to review my applications. I don't know. Like, because it's frustrating. I just want to get to a point where like I can finally just have that stability for myself and it be legit. And it's like, yeah, I have this job. I have this apartment. The apartment's paid off. I paid months off in advance. My bills are paid. And I can rely on me. And I don't have to rely on other people. I don't have to count on other people. I don't have to like bet on other people because that just puts me in a situation where like I could potentially be disappointed. And I'm just over that. Like I just rather save myself. I'd rather be my own knight in shining armor. I'd rather just be in a situation where I know, like, even if things don't turn out how I want to, like, at least I don't have anybody else to blame but me or whatever establishment that I'm trying to like collaborate or negotiate and broker a deal with. So yeah, anyway, that's basically what I was getting at. Um and just wanted to like set that as a reminder for myself, like just bet on yourself, trust yourself, stop trying to like hope that somebody will come save you, because there's many instances and many times where people could have and they didn't. And and they're playing, again, like some people have to play, like like I said, people have their own responsibilities, they have their own like life and things that they're handling. And and I'm grateful for the people that are taking the time and energy to just help me out simply by like buying a CD or like putting me in a position where I could make some money. I'm grateful for that, but I don't want to be in a situation where I have to solely rely on that. And and then if it doesn't work out, I'm being disappointed by somebody. Like I'd rather just like be in a situation where I'm like fully betting on myself, and if it doesn't work out, then like the only person I could really be upset at is me, or the establishment, you know, and again, hoping that I come across and work with the right people. But yeah, that's it. That's the live stream. That's all I was really trying to get at. But thanks for the people who joined in. Thanks for listening to me hooting and hollering. Not really hooting and hollering, but just like getting certain points across and just like realizing like, yeah, nothing actually matters and everything is a assimilation. And the only person that's going to break me out of the matrix is me, because some people can't. And some people are maybe trapped in the matrix themselves, or they might be agents at this point, and people think it might, think that they're the hero, but they're really an agent and don't know that they're an agent, or willfully choose to be both. I don't know. Whatever. Either way, this is just a reminder for me to be my own superhero and my own knight in shining armor and my own savior, because it's me. I'm my own hero. So that's it. Much love to y'all. Um, and yeah, that's all that I wanted to address. Yeah. To be my own hero.